The Mass Effect trilogy stands as one of my favourite franchises of all time. When I first played it back in the late 2000s, I remember thinking it was like the best parts of Star Wars and Star Trek. An expansive space RPG with character choice, incredible concepts, cool guns, and that bioware secret sauce. That just gave it that extra kick. It would be in 2012 when the finale of the trilogy, the predictably named Mass Effect 3, would be unveiled to the world. I would play this on a laptop that had no business being used for gaming, but it somehow managed. And in my time in the game, I would encounter old counterparts, unite alien species, take down massive enemies, pet my space hamster, and gather all of my war assets, whatever that meant, all in an effort to stage one final battle against the enigmatic and terrifying genocidal aliens known as the Reapers. This was to be the culmination of 3 games worth of story, choice, and growth. And I got to the end and, well... Now, I'm aware that these games are more than a decade old at this point, but that hasn't stopped me and my friend from university from talking about these endings for years. From texts in the middle of the night to it randomly coming up in our conversations, before we inevitably sigh in unison at what could have been. Mass Effect 3 didn't so much feel like an end as much as it felt like a death. The ending of Mass Effect 3 has gone down rather infamously for just how weird they all are. I don't just want to say they were bad because that feels kind of reductive and lazy, but they certainly weren't satisfying, so many of the fans of the series seem to agree. Alright, so I have so much I want to say on Mass Effect, but I don't intend on this video being a deep dive, so I'll try not to be too exhaustive. Obvious spoilers ahead. At the climax of the game, after the final charge to take down the Reapers in London, you were hit with a devastating attack from the main big bad Reaper, known as Harbinger. You then claw your way to a beam which transports you up to a previously undiscovered part of the Citadel. You then meet a ghost child who tells you he's an AI who's been created by organics, who he then killed because AIs will always kill organics, and then repeat every 50,000 years. That's the gist of it anyway. You were then given 3 choices: destroy the Reapers, attempt to control them, or synthesize a new race, in what would become rather mockingly referred to as the blue, green, and red ending. The complaints about the endings range from a lack of acknowledgement of player choice to it just not really making any sense. The backlash for this was pretty intense. They ended up getting roasted so hard that BioWare themselves ended up addressing the issues in a free DLC, the Extended Cut ending, with added cutscenes and extra dialogue to, quote, clarify and add closure to the ending, and straight up removing some plot holes they previously denied being plot holes. It's clear that something was really being lost in translation. In the Extended Cut, there are now 4 endings, one of them being shooting the starchild in the face and getting a bad ending where everyone just dies, which ended up feeling like a bit of a dig at people who didn't want any of these endings. The synthesis ending where... Okay, I'm sorry, I still think this one is just dumb and makes no sense. The destroy ending, which supposedly kills you and the Reapers, but now even more confusingly is the only ending where Shepard is shown to be alive in a post-credit scene, and the control ending, which essentially isn't too different from what every antagonist in the trilogy has tried to do so far, and failed. The ending left fans of the franchise in such a rut that they began to form theories about what actually happened. There was a whole documentary made where fans put forward a theory, one which many people, including me, took from the ending of the game. Everything after this moment didn't actually happen. Across the games, a core weapon used by the Reapers is indoctrination. People are susceptible to mind control, everything from whispers in their head to full-on husks. It is argued that Shepard, who has been in close proximity to many Reapers over the years, is finally succumbing to that indoctrination. And what is happening at the end of Mass Effect 3 is essentially an internal battle in their own mind. In the first Mass Effect, Saren's plan is to prove organics worthy to the Reapers, to try and prevent them from being harvested. The way he plans on doing this is essentially becoming subservient to the machine race. To no surprise, he is eventually revealed to be indoctrinated. But curiously, in a speech he gives at the end of the game, he actually suggests a symbiosis between machine and organic, essentially pitching the synthesis ending.
Sovereign's controlling you through your implants. Don't you see that?
The relationship is symbiotic.
Organic and machine intertwined, a union of flesh and steel. The strengths of both, the weaknesses of neither. I am a vision of the future, Shepard. The evolution of all organic life. This is our destiny.
When confronting the elusive man at the end of Mass Effect 3, he is absolutely dead set on the idea of controlling the Reapers, to the point where it overrides every other impulse he has, including stopping them from destroying all intelligent life in the galaxy. Just like in the Control ending.
Control is the means to survival. Control of the Reapers, and of you, if necessary.
They're controlling you!
I don't think so, Admiral. We've advanced more than the past 10,000 years combined. And the Reapers will do the same for us again, 1,000-fold. Only if we can harness their ability to control.
Bullshit! We destroy them, or they destroy us.
If we destroy the Reapers, this ends today. But if you can't control them...
But I can!
Are you willing to bet humanity's existence on it?
I know it will work.
You can't, can you? They won't let you do it.
No! I'm in control! No one is telling me what to do!
Listen to yourself. You're indoctrinated.
In both of these examples, the antagonists are convinced that they are doing the right thing, when in fact they are conveniently being distracted from stopping the Reapers, and focusing their efforts on fighting one another. Also, in the Control and Synthesis ending, they are framed as having few compromises. In the Control ending, it's assumed that Shepard will be the only casualty in the form of a heroic sacrifice, and in the Synthesis ending, it's laid out as a kind of acceptable compromise. Whereas in the Destroy ending, as it's presented, we are told it would lead to the deaths of characters such as Edie and all the Geth, which Mass Effect 3 explicitly and heartbreakingly goes to great lengths to pose the question.
Does this unit have a soul?
The quote-unquote right thing to do becomes split into multiple choices. Like a decoy, it becomes harder to choose, and possibly a desperate last gasp of a species on the verge of extinction, trying to increase its odds of survival. Incidentally, both Saren and the elusive man's realizations end with a bullet to the brain. This idea of indoctrination was even put to the bioware team at one point. It's one of those theories that, to me, not only makes sense, but would probably be the superior ending to the story. If I'm being really honest with you, I think it was intentionally put into the game, even if it's subtly hinted at, never confirmed. I can't think of any other reason why Shepard would still be alive after one of the endings. But on that subject, why is there all of this confusion? In August of that same 2012 release year, the Leviathan DLC was announced, a $10 story mission whereby you go to the depths of the ocean to find out more about the Reaper's origin, which is intended to help explain the game's ending better, and gives you war assets to contribute towards a better ending. A few months later, in November of that year, the Omega DLC was announced, a $15 story mission, alluded to in the main game and gives you war assets to contribute towards a better ending. In February of 2013, the Citadel DLC was announced, a $15 story mission where you could spend time with your crewmates one more time, and which gave you war assets to contribute towards a better ending. On the very first day Mass Effect 3 was released, it was accompanied by a Day 1 DLC named From Ashes, a $10 short mission which allows you to unlock a character who is seemingly very important to the plot, yet squirreled away in the code of the original game. I feel like I don't need to belabor this. EA Games' acquisition of the Mass Effect franchise bore the brunt of many people's anger towards the climax of the series, whether affecting the ending through malice or incompetence. This was at a time when microtransactions in games were really beginning to take off. The everything EA wanted to challenge was apparently consumers of their game not giving them nearly double the money for them. And I know, this all seems like a weird thing to bring up 10 years after the game came out, but I think it speaks to the power that Mass Effect had on me, and so many other people. Earlier in their life, BioWare cut their teeth on Star Wars games. In Knights of the Old Republic, the light and dark side going on to inspire the Paragon and Renegade dichotomy, central to Mass Effect. However, the game undoubtedly borrowed from harder sci-fi such as Star Trek in a number of different ways. 20 years earlier, in 1992, Star Trek The Next Generation would air an episode called Chain of Command, where Captain Picard is taken prisoner by the Cardassians and placed under enhanced interrogation, part of which involves him being asked how many lights he sees. When he answers with the objectively correct truth, he is jolted with an immense amount of pain, which is repeated until he tells his captor he instead sees 5 lights, highlighting the perception of reality under coercion. If you were born a little later than me, you might use the word gaslighting or Riz YOLO or something like that, while TikToking on your skateboard listening to Michael Jackson. But this was a scene taken directly from George Orwell's 1984. Even though it's probably been close to 15 years since I read this, it is one of the most iconic moments from the book. The disdain for Big Brother, displayed by the protagonist Winston Smith, is prevalent throughout the book as he delves deeper into defiance. Falling in love with Julia, and knowing that he may one day get a bullet to the back of his head for all of this. Eventually captured, his torturer tells him to see 5 fingers, when in reality he is holding up 4, all while being starved and physically beaten. It would take Winston Smith being brought to room 101 and being threatened with rats, his worst fear, and the thought of them chewing through his face, for him to finally relent. He disavows Julia and declares loyalty to Big Brother, and then he is released back into the world. Him and Julia meet up again eventually in a cafe. They express they no longer love each other, then go their separate ways. Then, the final paragraph of the book.
The long-hoped-for bullet was entering his brain. He gazed up at the enormous face. 40 years it had taken him to learn what kind of smile was hidden beneath the dark moustache. Oh, cruel, needless misunderstanding. Oh, stubborn, self-willed exile from the loving breast. 2 gin-scented tears trickled down the sides of his nose. But it was all right. Everything was all right. The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother.
Doublespeak is described as language that deliberately obscures, disguises, distorts, or even reverses the meanings of words. Fans were keen to point out that throughout the game, the compassionate Paragon option was color-coded to be blue, and the more ruthless Renegade option, red. The subtle implication at the end of the game being that controlling the Reaper would be compassionate, and that destroying them would be more impulsive and rash, lending to more of an indication of mind control by the Reapers. The motto of the party in 1984 being,
War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength.
In the Destroy ending, you fulfill your mission of killing all the Reapers, but are also told that they will eventually return and the cycle will continue. In this ending, the suggestion that violence while bringing about peace will eventually lead to more violence.
War is peace.
In the Synthesis ending, every being in the galaxy's DNA is altered into a new kind. There is no longer a difference between organics and synthetics, which, aside from giving us a horrific result of Reaper husks, essentially zombies, gaining sentience, are also essentially forcing changes on every living organism's genetics.
Freedom is slavery.
In the Control ending, well, this is the new ending I'd like to focus on, because this one just creeped me out the most. Shepard does exactly what they have prevented so many other antagonists in the game from doing, trying to control the Reapers rather than defeat them. This is, of course, dressed up and explained away in the context of the ending, but assuming this is all part of an elaborate psyop of a species trying not to be destroyed, and the fact that in the end you literally become the Reapers, it's just kind of an insane ending to the game, knowing everything that we know.
Ignorance is strength.
It is the fact that there are people who willingly chose this ending, and were presumably happy with this decision, that may make it the most interesting. In a way, it's a game over to end all game overs, One so convincing that the protagonist, the player, or even the game itself even registers it. There is no respawn, no mission failure screen, like a parasite inside you. It takes what it needs so it can survive, while leaving enough of you to make you think that everything is fine and normal. But this, of course, is all theory. In reality, I think there's a chance that not even the writers who worked on the game know the actual true ending. It's no secret that it was a messy, chaotic time, and the endings had to be cut up, rearranged, rewritten, and the organisational structure being what it was in a company of this kind would have meant a whole room of chefs spoiling the soup. But in a funny kind of way, that just opens it up to all kinds of interpretations.
Here's the thing, the thing is, we don't want to comment either way on it, and here's why. We don't want to be prescriptive for how people interpret the ending, especially with the extended cut DLC coming out. We don't want to, again, be prescriptive with how people should think things ended. We want the content to speak for itself.
So you heard it right here. The endings are whatever you or I want to make of them.
License to screw up, Commander. You heard it straight from the ship.
But does any of this even matter? I spoke earlier about the pricing of the DLCs, the splintering of the game into separate parts, all of which you felt you had to collect in order to get the most out of the Mass Effect story. In 2021, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition was announced, a remastered version of all 3 games and all of their DLCs, for the price of one regular game. I bought this because, well, of course I did. I was always going to. But the other day I saw it on sale for the price of $3.99. $3.99 for all of this. It is mind-blowing. I think to myself, how lucky the new adopters of the game are that they get all of these together, and all of those other issues are just kind of forgotten about. People play the game now without even realizing it was ever any different. I think back to years prior, as I sat there playing the Citadel DLC. It's a light-hearted, fun love letter to the franchise, which ends with you spending time with all of your crewmates one last time, and culminating in a party in your apartment within the very trendy cyberpunk-inspired Silver Sun Strip. Laughs are had, and it feels great to have all these characters you've known in one place for something other than killing enemies. But in a way, this feels more like a wake than a party, because you know that this is the end. The last piece of this we are ever going to get. And you can just hear that it meant the same thing to the actors too.
It's been a good ride.
The best.
Optimistically, it's a love letter to the franchise to sign off on. Cynically, it could be described as weaponized fan service, the price of which is, at best, the money you spent on it, and at worst, the cost of going into business with a company that will compromise your game for pure profit. But what's even worse is that ultimately, it didn't really matter to me. I played it, marveling at just how much I was loving it, how it gave me such a warm, fuzzy feeling, thinking to myself, this was it. This was why I loved Mass Effect so much. This is the real ending to the game. And then I think back to the ending of 1984.
The waiters were turning back to their work. One of them approached with a gin bottle. Winston, sitting in a blissful dream, paid no attention as his glass was filled up, with everything forgiven. His soul white as snow. He was in the public dock, confessing everything, implicating everybody. He was walking down the white-tiled corridor with the feeling of walking in sunlight.
Maybe the reason why I can come to terms with the ending of Mass Effect all of these years later is that my mind simply accepts it as something else. I didn't have to think of the ending anymore. Despite all my criticisms, I still bought the game, DLCs, and I loved them. Perhaps I'd fallen to the same fate as Winston, Shepard, Saren, and the elusive man. My glass was already filled up. I had what I wanted, regardless of the actual cost or truth. And just maybe, it's why I think of the darkest possible ending in Mass Effect 3, where we become what we have fought against for so long, being the most poetic. This was the bullet entering Shepard's brain. Shepard finally loved Big Brother.